how the global economy works, what makes us richer and poorer, what causes a boom, what causes a bust, what causes a depression, what causes disaster is so counterintuitive that the best people spend their entire years, win Nobel Prizes and sometimes can't figure it out. You'd think that if I go in and create devastation, where we blow up buildings and drop bombs and destroy bridges, that would be ruinous to the economy of both the participating players and the victim country. But counterintuition tells us that then the concrete orders that you make and the rebuilding orders that you put and the weapons that you buy and the tanks that you need to replace can create an economic boon. Counter to that if powers go in and squeeze economies, as happened with Germany after the Treaty of Versailles, that only lays the grounds for a future war. When great moments do happen, they do cause fundamental change. The entire financial system of the world today, and now we've become to recognize it for what it's worth, was created after 1945 to reflect how the world was set up then. IMF, WTO, the Bretton Woods system, the SWIFT system for international banking transactions, of whose servers are in Canada, US and Europe, which is why they can ban Russia from the SWIFT transactions. In all the lessons that are being learnt here, here's the bottom line. Whenever countries like the US and Europe and others have tried to impose sanctions, those sanctions have ruined the people, but almost never achieved any strategic objectives. Think about Iraq and the oil for food program. You can Google this, the oil for food program scam. Okay? The people of Iraq suffered, made no difference to the strategic objectives, nor did it engender regime change in Iraq. Think about Iran and the sanctions to prevent Iran's nuclear weapons program. What did it achieve? Nothing. Think about North Korea. Did the sanctions prevent Kim Jong-un from buying his whiskey and fast cars and building a nuclear ballistic missile? No. What they do cause is fundamental change. And here we are walking in to those who do want a different kind of world order, not the ones we imagine, the ones the Chinese imagine, is that a large amount of Russian raw material, including oil, of which Russia is one of the largest producers in the world, and gas, a large percentage of their financial transactions, a large percentage of their trade transactions will be routed through China. Now, I'm going to give you one last example before I open up this conversation. When the sanctions were opened on Iran, and Iran produces 90% of the world's saffron, which is tragic because you'd think Kashmir should, but Iran does. Sanctions are imposed on Iran to prevent it from exporting saffron. Then suddenly, Spain, which produces no saffron whatsoever, becomes one of the largest saffron exporters in the world. How is that happening, you think? Think about it for a second. Spain produces no saffron, but it is one of the largest saffron exporters in the world. Now, you can put the two and two together. So, the question is, when the rerouting happens, and the rerouting is happening as we speak because Russian financial transactions are going to be routed through Chinese banks, who does that benefit? Well, guess who? So, let's open up this conversation. Gautam Mukherjee is with us, Vijay Kranti is with us, General Qadian is with us, Patikrit is with us. Let me start with you, Patikrit. Okay, it's not like Saddam stopped selling oil and making money from it. It's not like the Russians are going to stop international trade. They're just going to reroute it. Most likely they're going to reroute it through China, and that becomes the perfect Chinese trap.
Rishabh, that's number one. You have very correctly put. The Russians also from the beginning have been talking about de-dollarization. I think they have done a considerable amount of that. They have their own alternate to SWIFT, which is called SPFS. China has the KIPS, which is cross-border interbank payment system. You will see further integration of SPFS and KIPS of China. You would see more about the transactions happening through UniPay, which is an alternate to SWIFT and MasterCard. You would see, unfortunately, what the West has done. They are pushing China and Russia to a greater alliance, and you would see yen and ruble would have a far more stable exchange rate, and they would eventually ask, when the irony is, when the winter sets in Europe in the next few months, and Europe would have to buy gas. So since they are banned from SWIFT, Russia might ask them that if you have to buy, because otherwise Europe will freeze to death, then you have to buy it in the Russian or the Chinese payment system, payment gateways. We will not do it through you.
So, particularly if somebody wanted to, most foreign exchange reserves are measured in dollars. They once measured in gold, but then all of us have adopted the dollar standard, including us. We also measure our foreign exchange reserves as roughly $500 billion. Okay. So, if somebody wanted to replace the dollar as the global reserve currency, this is the ideal situation where the NATO,
Absolutely.
the Americans, the Brits, the Europeans are per force forcing you to give up on the dollar.
Right.
So Russia has to basically dump its dollars, and as you mentioned, what's it going to buy? Not euros. So what's it going to buy? It's going to buy yuan. It's probably going to buy rupees. That's what's going to happen now.
Yes, Rishab, if I'll just give you an an estimation of it, of the $630 billion foreign exchange reserve that Russia officially has, only 16% is held in dollar. Rest is in commodities and in yuan, which is the Chinese currency. And if you have to break the petrodollar nexus, the alternate is to move to something else, which the Western, stupidity is actually forcing the Russians, the Chinese to move towards. And, there are already discussions in India that if this is the way sanctions are to be put by the West, and if this is the new tool of banning from the SWIFT, then we have to have our alternate to SWIFT, equally, just as the Chinese and the Russians have it. And just as we have had the cryogenic sanction, we had the sanction on supercomputers, and we made all those things. So unfortunately, or whatever, the flip side is, the reality is that you would see, and this is where the Americans are very concerned. They don't want to push the Russians to a corner because they don't know what the outcome would be. And they don't want to lose their monopoly on SWIFT either. So you might see in the next 3-4 months, suddenly a window will be opened
Let's take it into practical realities. Okay, Gautam Mukherjee. So online transactions, the big player PayPal, okay. The two major credit card companies, Visa, MasterCard, both headquartered in America, okay. The SWIFT Banking International Transaction System, which is headquartered, there are 3 servers. One is in Canada, one is in the US, and one is in Western Europe. Russia is out of all of them. Now, they're not going to stop trading, so they are going to develop alternatives. Have the Americans and the Europeans just ensured that a major global economy just exits the systems that they dominated?
Yes, entirely. You said it in terms of the servers. This is like, you control the switch and you turn it off whenever you feel like it. In the process, you become unreliable. You become somebody who cannot be trusted, and your business empire shrinks. The ones you're switching off the lights on will find new lights, new switches, and that is happening. And even if you were to withdraw all these sanctions, let us hypothetically say tomorrow, it still doesn't make the rest of the world trust you. So you and your Western alliance have gone and done it to yourselves, more than you've done it to Russia.
Okay.
And you've got.
So I'm going to ask the provocative question, because I still consider Gautam Mukherjee, these people are friends. What is the lesson we've learned here of the domination of the post-Bretton Woods? I mean, literally, if tomorrow the Americans decide that, they have a problem with us, and they mandate that Google and Apple simply switch off access to their systems, I think about 1 billion smartphones in India would shut down overnight. So what is the lesson that we've learned here as well?
Well, what we've learned is that if you rely on the, first of all, a standard is meant to be left alone. You can't mess around with standards. And if you say, well, we're the guardians of the standards, but we will mess around with the rest of you, then alternatives will have to be sought, whether you do it or not. This is the key point. I'm not waiting till they switch off things. I'm going to start working on alternates right now. That's what India must be
Yeah,
thinking.
Tomorrow what happens if the Americans say, okay, we refuse access to GPS, we refuse access to American firms operating. Now, hopefully that won't happen, but it has happened in the past. It's happened in high tech, so you and I haven't felt it as much directly, but it can happen. So let me get General Qadian in. General Qadian, have the sanctions on Russia, could they have the counterproductive impact of driving all of Russia's economic interactions, trade and diplomacy via proxy from China?
Rishab, the full impact of the sanction is yet to be felt. It has been just introduced or just imposed, but it is a clear case of compulsion being the mother of change.
Yes.
The world order is bound to change with these compulsions. Secondly, sanctions have never worked. You gave your examples. In fact, they further embolden the man who's been sanctioned into defying the world. North Korea is a clear example. Despite sanctions for so long, he still continues to show his finger to the world and test firing his missile practically every week. So a new world order will emerge. I am not an expert on either technology or on finance, but in general terms, there will be a change which in the long term may be for the better. So that the world is not dominated by one power center. I mean, if you take the centuries, Spain was the greatest country at one time, then there was France, then UK, who ruled almost 1/4 of the earth. Then Americans came, the world order has to change. And I think these are occasions when that change will be enforced and hastened.
The General Qadian, because of the sorry to use the word, but swiftness of what has happened. Literally in a week or two, all the major financial institutions have cut ties to the Russians. And obviously that's going to be damaging to them. But the oil is still in the ground, the gold is still in the ground, the minerals are still in the ground. Those haven't gone anywhere. So obviously it will be inconvenient and they'll find alternative routes. I mean, if Saddam Hussein could find alternative routes, if the North Koreans could find alternative routes, if the Iranians could do it, the Pakistanis could do it, well, I'm sure the Russians will do it also. So have we just basically disconnected Russia from a West-dominated, dollar-denominated system and told them that you are now probably with the Chinese and their financial systems?
In my view, yes. Russia has been pushed to the corner. They have to look for alternatives. The old system cannot come back and will not come back, in my view. They are now aligned with China, or they will further align. China, as it is, but on a kind of a challenging course with the Americans, maybe in the Indo-Pacific or various other issues. China has a large part of the world under debt today. They have the money. The Russians have now the motivation. So I think they will combine and another world order will come. And India, of course, will face a problem. The only impact of the sanctions will be on the common people in Russia.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, just think about it. Vijay Mallya wasn't really affected. He is still chilling in London. And he was just one man with a few million who could figure out everything under the sun with, now we know his trust funds running from British Virgin Islands and whatnot. So if he could do it, I'm sure the Russian billionaires can do it just as easily. Vijay Kranti, all that we have learned from sanctions. So is it going to impact the Russian economy on the high figure GDP? Yes, but all that we learned from sanctions in North Korea, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, they only affect the poor people on the ground. They have zero effect on the ruling establishment. What are we going to achieve, sir?
I think this time the way America, European Union and NATO, the way they have acted, to me it appears they might be thinking that they have achieved something, but it is almost like digging their own grave.
Yeah.
In one way, this whole issue, the way Russia has, they could not stop Russia from invading and then staying there and continuing there, that has in a way, proven the irrelevance of NATO and insignificance of European Union and importance of America. Because all these three forces have ceased to have any influence. And if these sanctions, if they are thinking they are going to achieve something, to me it appears, number one, it will, the biggest gainer will be China, because the way China is going to use this situation, they are pushing Russia into China's laps. And once they two join hands, they will be a much bigger problem what China was earlier before this Ukraine incident. Now, America and Europe will be facing a much serious, much bigger problem. Sanctions, one thing is the sanctions will have actual effect. They will take many days. On the ground, right now, all the resources which are needed for fighting are in the hands of Russia. You can't decrease them over next 15 days or 1 month. And, that is enough for them to...
Okay, so Vijay Kranti, here's the reality check. Okay, now if you're sitting in Washington, okay, and you are threatening India potentially with, these CAATSA sanctions, what is the logic of not doing it? The logic is that India was procuring 70% of its arms from Russia. Dheere, dheere, slowly, slowly, okay, it's not going to happen overnight that suddenly we'll tell the Russians, okay, zero. We are going to scrap all the MiGs and Sukhois and Corvettes and aircraft carriers. We're going to throw them in the dustbin and we'll buy fresh from America. That's not how it's going to work. So it's going to happen over the period of time. Now, if you sanction India, you are guaranteeing that India will continue only buying Russian, which is why you don't sanction India, because it's the idiotic thing to do. Okay, you issue warnings, you do, but it's idiotic because you will guarantee it. So Vijay Kranti, by imposing the sanctions because they didn't want to do anything militarily, have they guaranteed Putin's rebellion or have they managed to curtail it? Is the larger question.
I think they have made Putin much stronger. The other day, I was listening to, 2 days ago, BBC was announcing about a survey, Putin's popularity. And they had to say that he has become more popular since Ukrainian action. And his popularity is today more than that. But BBC, in its own traditional, the way they do propaganda, they say it is because they are not watching the other TV, the international TV, or they are watching only Russian media. That itself was an admission that you can make noise on the international level, but you can't change the situation inside the country. Okay. So these sanctions are not going to make changes within Russia.
So here's
China,
the thing: when you do an action, that then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Pathikrit, have we now reached, because this is not theoretical, this is not a warning, this has happened, right? This is now a self-fulfilling prophecy that we have guaranteed Russia's exclusion from the world financial system, which means that they will find alternatives, and then we have placed the seeds of a creation of a new financial system, most likely out of Beijing.
One point, Rishab, if Putin realizes that Russia has no future because of sanctions, he will also make sure nobody has a future in the whole world. So what the NATO and United States have done, in spite of all the sanctions that they pretend to put in, they have kept the window open for Russian exports of oil, gas, and commodities, and that's the only thing that Russia exports.
Which has gone up. Which has gone up by 20%. It's not gone down. It's gone up by 20%.
Which means Russia will benefit. Which means Russia will benefit out of it. So, and they have banned SWIFT, which means they will go to the alternate system. Interestingly, from 2014 onwards, every transaction that India did with Russia was not in dollar. It was in a ruble exchange, which means that we have started working on it from 2014 onwards. For India, the biggest lesson is this, that you need to have technological reliance and you cannot depend on all the institutions that the West have a lid on. They can't have the remote control all the time and then say that we are fighting for the free world. Come on, this is not a free world. I mean, what are they trying to do by putting sanctions on Russia? They are trying to reduce the suppliers of oil and gas, which means then there will be reduction in supply, demand remaining high, price will go up, and the Western companies and their allies in Middle East will profit out of it. So they want to make profit out of it. And if the price of oil goes up to $185 a barrel, as per JP Morgan, why should India then buy it from the Americans and instead of buying?
Let me look at it from a contrarian point of view. If you are sitting in Beijing right now, okay, I'm not talking about Taiwan, okay, in practicalities. Your economy is not doing well. It's doing the worst it has done in 40 years. Okay? Your zero COVID policy hasn't worked. Now, you thought you benefited because from the global COVID disaster because you thought you could control it better than the others. Okay. So now you are seeing exit from a global COVID disaster into another economic crisis for the world, which has been engendered by Ukraine, which will happen. Okay, petrol prices in India are going to go up 15-20 bucks in the next couple of days, maybe more next week and more next week. So 40-50% hopefully within a month or two. So if you're sitting in China, you're saying, okay, great. So now NATO has created a global economic crisis for me. Okay. In addition, they are ensuring that one of the world's largest oil suppliers and economies can operate only through me. I'm a win-win.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where the question comes. If it was a nexus between China and some deep state operators of United States to deflect the attention entirely from China towards something else so that nobody talks about COVID and so that eventually China benefits out of it. That's a very big question mark as to why all these things is happening. And the other important point, Rishab, is this, that if push comes to a shove, India would have to have its own technologies for everything. That is a given. We can't be at the mercy of the West that, oh, if we do this, the sanctions will come. If the Russians give us the whole same oil at 20% discount as they want to give it, why should we not take it? Why should we suffer for something that the West have done it? Ukrainians never asked India as to whether they should join NATO or not.
This is the genius geostrategy which is being employed in Brussels and Washington and London right now. General Kadian, the genius is, okay, if you're reviewing this genius sitting from Beijing and you're looking saying, you know, the Russians were our allies and we wanted to make them junior allies, which Putin did not want to happen because for ego reasons or whatever. But now he has no options. We are his only friends. So you firmly push Putin economically, militarily with us. You've created a global crisis in which everybody will suffer at a time where our economy wasn't doing well. So it would have been painful if we were, if the Americans were growing faster than us. So you created a perfect situation and you've given us now a global situation precedent from invasion of Ukraine for Taiwan. So you've given us all the best things that we could have hoped for. If you're in Beijing, how are you appreciating the genius of Brussels?
Rishab, when they brought in this act, CAATSA Act, Americans, the word CAATSA has the word adversary in it. So if they sanction India based on what is happening today, then they make India adversary of the Americans, which will further push us into the lap of Russians. As it is, we cannot detach ourselves. Our peculiar security requirement needs a lot of weapons and equipment. Of course, ultimate answer is self-reliance, but that we have started already, but it's a long drawn process. Russian equipment was cheaper, it was sturdier, and technology transfer was easier. Plus, the payment terms, as the panelist says, we could pay in rupees versus ruble. So it will push India more and more. We cannot detach from the Russian equipment, even if we wanted to change over, it will take decades. I mean, all our repair, facilities in India which have been created are oriented to Russian equipment, all our training of the personnel. So we cannot. I think this is pushing India into the lap of Russian more and more Americans.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to figure out the geniuses who are sitting. So Gautam Mukherjee, so in all the fancy think tanks, you know, that operate in the US and operate in, you know, in London and in Brussels and, you know, and in Paris, the really fancy people, who have, professorships and tenureships, what did they think was going to happen? That if you sanction the Russians, that Putin would quit?
Rishab, there is a lemming-like homogeneity to Western thinking and an enormous pressure on everybody to conform to the norm. You know, they set up a norm and they say, well, look, how many ways can you praise this norm? So in a funny way, they call themselves Democrats, but they end up making sure that nobody has a contrarian point of view. The few that do are vilified. And today, what have they done? They have seen to it that NATO will have to be rolled back in the next decade from the entire former USSR. You know, all these countries that they have snapped up and either put in EU or NATO or both, it's starting already. To compound the foolishness, they're going to send planes from Poland to Ukraine, to the Kiev side of Ukraine, saying that these are Russian planes and so you guys will know how to fly it. We will replace them with F-16s. What have they done? They've drawn Poland into the battle. If not directly, indirectly, Putin has decided to ring fence Poland in addition to Ukraine, and it shares a border with Ukraine.
Okay, so
Ukraine will be
I'm
absorbed
trying to
into
think,
the
I'm trying to
USSR.
figure it out. What is the, I understand the logic of the emperor and his new clothes, but all the geniuses were thinking, what were they suspecting that they would happen? So Ukraine is now destroyed for the next 10, 20 years, okay? Their little navy is finished, their army, their planes, all of it was Russian supplied in the first place. The Russians have basically said, we'll take your money and then we blow up your own planes. All of this has happened. What was the genius that in this brinkmanship, what were they expecting to happen?
Well, I don't think Ukraine's destroyed at all. What will happen is, yes, there's been some amount of damage of war, but I think the way Russians are going about it is with a view to, amalgamate Ukraine into their federation. There will be no free and, there won't even be a satellite state because of these non-state actors which have also been pushed in.
Okay.
The attempt to create a guerrilla war beyond this, all of this will see to it that Russia will contain Ukraine.
Okay, so Putin is not a saint, okay, and one thing the first lesson, Vijay Kranti, that I was taught in international relations when I studied it was that ignore how the country is from within. The Soviet Union was a different political setup, the United States was a different political setup. In international relations, they think very similarly. Domestics don't apply, the same rules don't apply. So Vijay Kranti, Putin is no saint, but the geniuses who were sitting in London and Washington and all these fancy think tank people that have these fancy tenureships, in this Marshall Fund and this fund and that fund, what were they thinking was going to happen?
I don't know, but they might be thinking that they will be able to put a check on Russia and Putin will come on his knees. But the result.
No, but Vijay Kranti, if Kim Jong-un did not cave to sanctions, if Saddam Hussein did not cave to sanctions, if Khomeini did not cave to sanctions, what was the feeling that Putin is going to be different?
No, that is where I am saying, West has been thinking that this time they will be successful. I think this time they are more unsuccessful. One aspect which we should now realize what is happening. The West, when I say West, then European Union and NATO and America, not only they are losing face and ground in Ukraine, they are losing all those friends who used to rely on them. What is going to happen to Quad? Just wait. It will not be Quad, it will be a different Quad now. Because now India, Taiwan and Japan, they have realized that when the real trouble comes, so Americans might say that, oh, no, we are not jumping in.
No, Americans might say we'll ban PayPal. That's how they're going to help you. It's almost laughable. It's absolutely laughable. So this is the stuff that that boggles my imagination, because I have a lot of these fancy friends who sit in Washington and make a lot of crazy amount of money for think tank people and work for institutions that are 200 years old. Okay, I don't know whether I'm supposed to send them a copy, or maybe Patikrit can carry a copy from our side of the Arthashastra and Sun Tzu and all these people. Maybe they also need to read Machiavelli once again, because all these geniuses, what were they thinking is going to happen? You've just confirmed the worst, created a crisis in which the only losers are yourselves. If you think the Russians are the loser, they're not. The biggest gainers are probably going to the Chinese. When the Chinese were occupying island after island, territory after territory in South Asia and Southeast Asia, nobody did nothing. And we've gone to war over Ukraine. It's unbelievable, mind-numbing. Just for people watching the broadcast, just figure out where the saffron in the world comes from, okay? And that's the example I'm going to lead you to. The Russian people are going to suffer, okay? The Russian state is going to have absolutely no impact of these sanctions, and we have just guaranteed that China becomes a proxy for everything, and therefore its failing economy, which is in trouble right now, gets a boost because they will charge a transaction for helping out Putin and all the Russian oligarchs, and they're going to make billions out of this. Complete moronic insanity has taken place in global affairs, and it's a pleasure to watch these geniuses sitting in The Hague, in Brussels, in London, in Washington, justify the moronic insanity that has just happened, which is going to achieve no strategic goals, guarantee that Russia leaves the dollar denominated system, which the Chinese want them to leave. Wow, genius.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.